Welcome to First Geek Congregation. Well, if you've never watched us before, we're a bunch of geeks. Well, actually, today we're like two geeks in the room. There's not very many of us today. There's a con going on here in Wichita called Tsunami Con, which is a rather awesome gaming convention, board games, things like that. So we've got at least one person there and a couple people out for the other things. So it's, wow, small crowd. Anyways, we're a bunch of geeks. We talk about religion. We discuss it. We look into it. We do it usually from a Christian standpoint. Most of us are Christians, though we a lot of times have people who are of other faiths here, and which we're actually grateful for, because part of the premise behind First Geek Congregation is love, peace, and respect. And it's so much easier to respect somebody. We can kind of understand them a little better. We're held at the Center of Wichita, which is 800 North Market here in Wichita, Kansas. And it's the LGBT gathering center. There's conference rooms for meetings and things like that. It's a great place. It's community supported. And as a matter of fact, actually, check it out at thecenterofwichita.org and consider donating something to them. They've got some good programs here, like for instance, the Get Connected program, which gives LGBT teens a safe place to be and to discuss issues and to understand themselves a little better. Anyways, check it out. And of course, you can check us out at firstgeekcongregation.org or .com. I can't remember which. I think it's .org. And of course, on Facebook, you can catch us as, well, First Geek Congregation, or on Twitter, or any number of places. Today, we're going to be talking about Beyond the Joke. See, typically, we start every First Geek with, how's the audio?
Sounds good so far.
Yes. Okay. By the way, we're also testing for audio problems. If you've watched any of the previous ones, after we upgraded to the laptop to Windows 10, we had nothing but insane problems. And I didn't realize how bad the audio was until I went back to look at some of our previous episodes for this particular topic, and realized, wow, really bad. So hopefully we've got it all resolved now, reinstalled some drivers and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, Beyond the Joke is about the fact that every week we start out with our usual announcement of where we're at, and then dumbest religious story of the week. Dumbest religious story of the week is kind of fun. It pokes fun at religion. It pokes fun at ourselves. It pokes fun at all these issues going on in the world. Because, let's face it, some of you just got to laugh at it, or otherwise you really want to strangle somebody. And we've been doing this for a little bit now. And it's a fun thing. But the problem is, so many times the headline that we end up, talking about, or the article we end up talking about, really isn't in-depth enough to tell the true story. So we're going to look at a couple of those. And this is actually, we're typically 2 hours, and I think this one's actually going to be kind of short, especially because we're not going to have nearly the audience participation we normally do. But also because I decided to pick a short topic for once, just to see what happens. I'm often wrong, though, because sometimes I think that we're not going to fill the 2 hour span, and we're 10 minutes over at the end. So go big. We'll see. Anyways, I'm going to start off with an easy one. Actually, I'm going to start off with this week's dumb religious story of the week, which is a pastor in Singapore is going to prison for a while for embezzling $20 million from his church. Now, it's not too unheard of that ministers get tempted by the amazing amount of cash that goes through some of these mega churches. And I'll admit that the less than $20 a week we make in donations is highly tempting to me. But yeah, there's not going to be a whole lot of embezzlement here. It's just not going to happen. First Geek Congregation basically runs out of my pocket. Anyways, the minister, what he did with the money was pretty impressive. It was to support his wife's rap career. She wanted to be a rap star, so they took money out of the church, lots of it, to make her a rap star. And now he's in prison. That, by the way, that is the best dumb religion story of the week. You got one?
No,
And then often the best ones actually end up being something given by the rest of the group here. But so I'm going to count that as a win. I win this round. But that's a great dumb religious story of the week, because you know what? There is not another perspective you can look at this from that wasn't a dumb idea. Now I'm going to go back a week to Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson, if you don't know, part of the 700 Club, minister. He's been around forever. A lot of bombastic opinions. He makes a lot of, well, let's see. He predicted in 2007 that there was going to be a terrorist attack on U.S. soil. It wasn't going to be nuclear, but there was going to be a lot of loss of life. And God told him this, by the way. And but then, when it didn't happen in 2007, he attributed it to prayer. That he had to thank the individuals who prayed deeply that saved the U.S. And he's an interesting guy. I don't much care for him. He's one of those style of ministers I don't care for. And one of the things that's been attributed to him is the idea that if you pray hard enough, well, you'll be healed. God will heal you of all illnesses if you pray hard enough. Well, the thing is, he's had some surgeries. And, well, somebody finally called him on it and said, well, why did, if prayer heals everything, why do you go have surgery? And the article I quoted, or I went off of, Ted said that he stumbled and stammered and had a hard time answering the question. Actually, I found the video footage of it, and it's not the case. Actually, he had no problem answering it, and I even liked the answer, because the answer was pretty reasonable for a believer in Christ. This is directly quoted from Pat Robertson. I don't think that religion, faith, and medicine are necessarily enemies. Godly people are used by God to come forth with healing techniques that alleviate sickness and pain. I am simply amazed at all the wonders the medical profession can perform. So you say, why don't you pray for it and to take it away? And God may say, you prayed and you go see that doctor and he'll take that mole off your chin or something. I don't know what else to say. If you have enough faith, then maybe I don't have enough. But I have faith for other people. But for myself, I think I did the right thing. Actually, let's one of the more sane things I've heard him say. The idea that, pray for God for healing, and then go to the doctor. Perfectly reasonable. I mean, this seems like a reasonable idea. I mean, I have talked before about the idea of prayer. Prayer is not a substitute for action. Prayer is an accessory to it. You ask God, hey, I need this. Hey, I need money. Then promptly go to work. Things like that. It's not enough to just pray about something. And I have known people whose idea of how to save their life from cancer was to pray on it and to use quack medicine rather than deal with a doctor. I have deep problems with this. At no point, I mean, can you tell me a point where the Bible says, do not seek other help for your illness, but instead just pray to me? Because there's a number of spots where it is pray and you'll be healed. But it doesn't say just pray. It doesn't say to not, for instance, if I develop lung cancer, well, guess what? I'm going to go to the doctor and I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to take actions. You bet I'm going to pray over it. But I'm definitely going to take actions. So the headline, and this is one of those things that we're seeing so much online now. The headline read so easily that this guy made Robertson look like a buffoon. Actually, now the article just makes the people who wrote it and repeated it later look like buffoons. Because in reality, he gave a pretty good answer. And they just wanted to use him as a villain. Now, before anybody thinks, hey, you must really like Robertson, I don't. He represents a lot about Christianity I don't care for. He's an anti-homosexual. He's anti-this, anti-that, and not a whole lot on pro-love. That's a whole lot more important to me. One of the other ones that we talked about a lot, Kim Davis. For the most part, when it comes to stupid story of the week, I have passed on I don't know how many Kim Davis updates. But I want to go circle back around a little bit. Because again, there's some bite-sized pieces that you see versus her fate set. And let's look at them for a minute. One of the memes that's going around, has gone around many times, is that she won't sign off on gay marriages, but yet she's been married 7 times. Well, there's some interesting bits there. And start off with the whole Kim Davis thing. I'm going to get into it a little deeper, but the whole Kim Davis thing is surrounded with such lunacy anyways, that it's hard to pick on just one thing. But I am going to narrow on this for a moment. A couple of things to know about her. She's been married 4 times. And if you start doing the count of kids versus whose kid, whose father, or which husband and whose father's kid, whose kid's father, it gets a little weird. She has been married 3 times. But in the process, after her 4th marriage, she found God. She became, she changed what form of Christianity she was following, all these things. Now, there's a saying called "There's no zealot like a new convert." In a lot of ways, that's part of the category she falls under, is new convert. So one could start off by saying that a lot of the problem that she caused was because she was overzealous in her religious beliefs. I'm not going to use it as a defense, but it's easier to see. But the other thing is, there's a Christian belief. When we are baptized, the Christian belief is that you're not absolved, but you're washed clean of all of your previous sins. You are born again. You are free and clear of your old sins. It's a Christian belief. Not all of them believe quite the same way that others do. And obviously, if you're a mass murderer, for instance, you go get baptized, almost nobody is going to buy that as the idea that you've done away with all of those old murders. It doesn't quite work that way for most people. But the idea, from her standpoint, that there is no hypocrisy there, exists because if she's been blessed with a baptism and a change in religion, all these things, from a Christian standpoint, she lost those old sins. Those old marriages are gone. And apparently she had quite an interesting life previous to that. And the problem is, separating fact from fiction is awfully hard there. Give me just a second here. There's also been claims of nepotism and things like that with her job because her mom used to hold the position. Well, her mom held the position for 37 years. It's an elected position. You have to run for it. It's not like her mom said, hey, I'm stepping down. It's your turn, and got her hired there. It's a different sort of job there. She's an elected official position. And I have stated before my opinion. If morality prevented her from doing her job, she needed to step down from it. But I will admit, it is a little weirder to deal with when it's an elected position. Let's see if I can find. Oh yeah, and one other thing is I see her lumped in with the Republicans. She's not a Republican, she's a Democrat actually. She ran under a Democratic ticket. If I can find. Yeah, 2008 was when she, her third divorce. In 2011 is when she changed religions. So really, I mean, she's only got 4 years that she's been her current setting, and it was a religious awakening experience, is how she described it. And she's Pentecostal, so some people would say that already says a little bit something about her. And she's not a bad person in a lot of ways. She ended up holding, she does Bible study at jail once a week. She's one of the people that goes to services 3 times a week. From a religious standpoint, she's not doing too bad. But things with her got weirder and weirder over time. I mentioned the Oath Keepers. The Oath Keepers, if you're not familiar with them, is I don't have a great way of describing the Oath Keepers besides a bunch of jerks. I really don't. The idea being that these are private citizens who stand up for the Constitution, but they don't, not necessarily. And it's a $30 thing, and you become an Oath Keeper. And at one point, they decided they were going to defend Kim. They offered their services as essentially bodyguards and defense against U.S. Marshals, so that if she was going to be jailed again, they'd have to get through them. So I looked into the background of this story, thinking, maybe we're missing something. Maybe it's really not that much. Let me actually there we go. Let me actually give you their statement on it, because once I give you their statement, you'll see what really happened. We believe federal district court Judge David Bunning grossly overstepped his bounds and violated Ms. Davis's due process rights, and in particular her right to a jury trial. The judge has assumed to himself not just the powers of all 3 branches of government, but has also taken the powers of judge, jury, and execution. What matters to us is not whether you agree with her position on gay marriage or her decision not to ensue marriage licenses. What matters is that the judge is violating the Constitution in his anger and desire to punish her for going against his will. We are already being subjugated and to an unconstitutional imperial presidency that grows exponentially under both Bush and Obama, expanding the claimed war powers of the president to swallow up our Bill of Rights and circumvent jury trial. The result is an executive branch that claims the absurd power to declare any American an unlawful combatant on the say-so of the president alone. Now we see the rise of an imperial judiciary that not only legislates from the bench, but is attempting to expand their contempt power to likewise swallow up our Bill of Rights and circumvent jury trial. Both methods are used to allow the powerful office holder to merely point his finger and have his opponents thrown behind bars without a grand jury indictment and without being found guilty by a jury of their peers. No innocent until proven guilty before a jury. It's actually rough reading part of this. Just guilty because the leader says so. That is a dictatorship, whether done by a president or by a judge. No one man should have that kind of power in his hands alone to decide guilt and impose a sentence of indefinite detention. Under our Constitution, that dictatorial power does not exist. We stand up against this. So we will protect her and prevent it from happening. So what they were going to do is prevent her from being taken by U.S. Marshals. Literally, they were going to stand in the way. They were going to obstruct justice in every possible way. And that statement I read comes from their site. This isn't like some third-party blog. This was actually from them. What was really happening? A bunch of grandstanding. Kim Davis and her attorney said, no, we're not doing that. That you guys can go on home. Thank you very much. We don't need you. But what they did is they used Kim Davis as an excuse, as a way to stand up and make a lot of noise for themselves and to look like somehow they're heroes. Now, it takes a lot of broken logic to get to their conclusions that they used in that. They're really, really, really bad logic. And the thing is, with this story, there's no upside. There's no upside to the story because there's no way of saying, well, these guys didn't really mean it. Well, I'll bet if they were called on it, they probably would, because that's why they exist. They're looking for excuses. We have a tyrant of a president, as they say. And actually, though, I do find it interesting that they skipped out on just making it about Obama, but they also pointed the finger at Bush too. So it's kind of interesting that at least they're equal opportunity offenders. So yeah, the Oath Keepers thing really happened. The other one that has come up, and the latest in the Kim Davis saga, was that the Pope came to town, and she ended up with an audience with the Pope. Well, no, actually she didn't. Actually, what she got was a handshake from the Pope. And the Pope, the Vatican has clarified as much as possible that they have no interest in Kim Davis, that it was not in support of her, and that the Pope didn't really quite know who he was meeting with. She was in a line, he went by, did the usual greetings thing, as he was on his way to the actual audience that he was there for. A lot of anti-gay people viewed that as support by the Pope on how he stood with Kim. And here's the thing: apparently he didn't know. One could say that was BS. I have a friend who says it's absolutely BS. He hadn't even known who she was. You know what? It's American politics. Sometimes that doesn't really get out there very far. Additionally, especially when it's really stupid. But on top of this, he's pretty much a whirlwind tour of the U.S. He's not gonna even remember half the people he met. He's a pope, not a politician. He does a little of both. But by the way, those who are using it to further an anti-homosexual agenda don't mention where he was headed at the time. He was headed for an audience with an old student of his, student and friend, who was in a gay marriage. He was there to meet with him and his husband. So, and this is apparently a very dear friend of his. So, the story that hit the headlines, the jokes and everything, aren't really much of anything like what really happened. And supposedly, I say the words supposedly, the bishop, the archbishop, excuse me, that was in charge of setting up who the Pope was meeting with, or who he was shaking hands with, that helped kind of orchestrate that situation. Apparently, that guy's been reprimanded. I say the words apparently because sometimes with the Vatican, it's hard. Some things are just internal business and they don't necessarily announce it to everybody else. So there's no telling whether that's actually true. Another dumbest story of the week. Oh man, I don't think I saved that. Give me a second. I lost the story. Shoot. There's a pastor that Dang it, I lost it. I forgot to link it. But I can tell you the story. I mentioned it last week that, I think it was last week, or not last week, the week before, I think I mentioned it, that there was a pastor who came out saying he understood pedophilia, and he had essentially blamed it on the kids. The idea being, he didn't understand homosexuality, but he could understand how priests might have a problem, might get into these pedophilia situations, and that a lot of the problem is actually on the kids, and that in reality it's the kids seeking attention. Well, this is one of those times I like following this one up. He's been fired. He was removed from his parish, and he has been completely removed from the church. Apparently, when the church has started finally having somebody in charge who realizes exactly how many problems they've had with pedophilia, with abuse at the hands of ministers and things like that, they no longer will tolerate it, and they have removed it. The thing is, again, scratching behind the surface, and unfortunately I forgot to say my links on that one. Scratching behind the surface a little bit, it really was absolutely true. I mean, there wasn't even like with the Pat Robertson thing, excuse me, not Roberts. With the Pat Robertson thing, there was a context issue. They took a little piece out of context, and they showed him as being a buffoon. This guy, no, he was really this much of an asshole. He really was going to blame the problems between priests and the kids in their congregations on the kids. He really truly believed this. And this is one of those things where I'm wondering whether or not if they dig into this guy's background a little further, they're going to find some other problems. And I wonder if they're going to do that. It would be great if they did and found the truth. Hopefully we did. And believe it or not, that is the end of my list of it, which I said from the beginning, this is going to be a short one. And so far, Harvey's been monitoring the audio here, and you've not heard any other more crackling and popping. Mm-hmm. I think we finally have it resolved. Oh my goodness. Because apparently for like 6 episodes straight, we've been crackling and popping and not knowing it. The intro on some of them would be fine for just a little bit, and then it would start. So anyways, next week we'll be back with a much longer topic. But for now, I hope you enjoyed our little look at some of the ones that we consider to be such a joke. And the idea, though, that sometimes more than just reading the headlines as they are, because this is a society of instant gratification and of shares, we need to actually stop, think, and look behind these things. It's so easy to get wound up in the idea that we want to see Pat Robertson be an idiot. Well, just because we want it doesn't necessarily mean that's what just happened. We want Kim Davis to be a hypocrite. But without standing in her shoes for a moment and looking at her from her religious standpoint, it's very easy to say those things. Once you start looking at it from her standpoint, maybe there's a little bit more to it. It's so easy to hit share on all these links that come through. We should quit that shit. Really, we should. We should actually stop and think, engage our brains, and actually look and read a little bit more before we actually hit share on this. Because pretty soon we're going to get to the point that we start destroying people over things that aren't even true anymore. And the thing is, everybody will be able to do it because they'll just hit share because of the great headline. So, anyways, see you next time. As soon as Harvey hits stop on that thing,